And whether they did it intentionally or not, they really queued us up for some of the next sessions that we're going to be going through. This group here will be talking about the benefits and challenges of platform unification. And I'm going to be doing a bit of the theory. I'm joined here by Scott Hendry from ASM International. And Scott, I have your title, which I must read because I love it, and I want it for my own. You are the Director of Content and Knowledge-Based Solutions.
No, actually, I have a new title.
Oh! Wow.
Yeah, Senior Content Engineer.
Oh, okay.
Junior Content.
Because I had shortened that to just Director of Knowledge, which I thought was good. And Jasper Simons from the American Psychological Association, Chief Publishing Officer. That's not as exciting, Jasper. They'll be sharing their experiences with this topic. Uh-oh. Oh, that can go to sleep. OK, that's good to know. I'm going to lay out a bit of the theory, and they're going to share their real-world experience with this topic. So when we talk about platform unification or platform consolidation or bringing things together, I want to start with a scenario that I encounter occasionally, or actually frequently, when I go and talk with publishers of many different sizes, big and small, nonprofit and for-profit. And that scenario is that an organization, through development in, say, different departments or over a different time period, ends up with a variety of product delivery platforms, front-end delivery platforms that are covering sometimes different disciplines, but many times different aspects of the same discipline: research, reference and education, training and certification platforms, meetings running from a completely separate platforms, news and events, and things like members magazines running from different platforms. And this is a very common scenario. Some of you are experiencing this now, I'm sure. Some of you will be experiencing that in the future. And when I talk to the folks running digital strategy at these organizations, a lot of times what I hear is that they believe, and they have their own analysis, so they can create a competitive advantage if they could cohere those platforms together and have a cohesive look at the CRM, the customer relationship management, the analytics, the overall customer experience with their brand and their organization, and their product management and roadmap. And as they're thinking about how to cohere these together, there's a couple of choices that are out there. And I will lay out the choices. I think that I have a bit of a bias into one of the choices. But they're all valid choices to be made. And one of the choices is, you know what, let's not change where we are. Let's leave all of our product delivery platforms where they are, and let's actually cohere them up at the organizational level. So you'll notice there's a lot of white lines here. If someone could quickly do the math for me, how many white lines are on this page? 20, thank you. You win a free drink at the reception. Thank you, Defiance. So there's actually 20 points here where either the platform or the organizational unification has to be hooked up together and be normalized into something that can be cohesive. So while you can leave your products on different platforms, you will have some work to do to bring cohesiveness to your product vision, your customer experience, your CRM, your analytics. So this is an option that some people go for. The second piece is to kind of build a new layer, a unification layer between your products, leaving your products still where they are on their individual platforms, building a unification layer to try to unify things like an interface, a user experience, a customer experience. Some of these have interfaces, like, say, a customer experience portal, but some of them are purely programmatic, so APIs around analytics and CRM. And this is a way to bring some cohesiveness before it makes it to the organization, so you don't have to do it all after the fact. The third option, and this has really tested my PowerPoint skills, is to create a gradient with 5 points in it, is to actually unify your products at the product platform level. Now, you'll notice there's less white lines here. There's 4 of them. And the point here is that if you are making some cohesiveness down at the product platform level, then you can more easily have a cohesive roadmap that is applied across your product suite, a customer experience, a CRM, and again, your analytics coming to the fore. So there are, and fine, there's one more option, and that is a little bit of everything. This was beyond my PowerPoint capabilities, so I just put a nice Leonardo da Vinci sketch here. I'm pretty sure this is what he was thinking of when he made this sketch in the early 1500s. Where you have some products that are unified together, you have some that sit alone, you have some cohesiveness that is done post facto, and some that's done ahead of time. So today, I really wanted to focus on number 3, and that is bringing your products together onto a single product delivery platform and the benefits that you can gain from that, but also the challenges involved with that. This is the benefits and challenges, so I'm not an unabashed cheerleader for this approach. I'd like to examine both, and of course, Scott and Jasper will be talking about their real-world experiences. Well, they'll have seen the benefits and challenges as well. So I'm going to walk us through 5 benefits that can be had through this approach, through this unification approach. And one of them was really somewhat of the star of the show of the opening panel, which is the large conversation around management and maintenance of technology. And I put a pretty simple example on the board here. If you have 3 platforms, $3 million, you're going to have a lot of duplication of management and maintenance of those platforms. When GDPR needs technical implementation, you have to do that across 3 platforms. You have to be managing SEO across 3 platforms and 3 code bases. Your management, if these are 3 different vendors or 3 different organizations, you're going to have 3 different contracts to be managing in legal. So what happens is you get these duplicative costs, and it leaves some money left over for innovation, and each of the platforms can do some, but it's not nearly as attractive as the second side, where it is true, of course, if you're going to be bringing multiple products onto a platform, you're going to have a higher management and maintenance cost for that one platform. But you'll notice here that by eliminating a lot of duplication, you're actually freeing yourself up. Now, if there's CFOs in the room, that innovation, they'll just chop a little off that and say, well, that's going right back to the bottom line. Thank you very much. But if you're in product, it'd be great to keep that to do the future innovation that you want to do. So this is really about spending more on what matters. And again, I'd like to tie that back to the concept earlier of competitive versus commodity. Certainly, no one is distinguishing themselves economically by how they handle GDPR in a positive way. Maybe in a negative way you're distinguishing yourself, but not in a positive way. So the second benefit that can come from this approach is really around instant product creation. So if all of your content is in the same repository, it's faster and easier to create new products. And also just create custom sales opportunities for folks who are coming in. The folks that I've been talking to say that they're seeing much more demand for tailored purchases from subscribers in particular. They want packages that have only what they want and nothing else. And they want you to construct that for them very quickly on the fly, price it and deliver it to them. So this gives you an option to do that even across your different reference and education and research silos. The third piece, and so at Silverchair, we do this via our tools. And of course, other platforms have other tools that will do the same across theirs as well. The third one is a little more subtle. And that is almost every organization that I go and talk to has a couple of big winners when it comes to traffic and attention and brand, and some not quite so winners in their portfolio. Underappreciated, underused content and products. Products and content that may be amazing and may, when anyone encounters them, is a positive experience for them, but they just don't encounter them. And so by bringing your products together, you do have control over how you can put things in front of users and rank them. So if you use your most popular traffic source, whether that's your research journal, whether that's an educational, a required educational activity that you know every single person has to go to and take, you can surface relevant content and products for them that would increase the discovery of those products for that core audience very easily. And my last note in here is that this can be you can do this temporarily or you can do it permanently. So you can say temporarily I want to really push this particular new product I'm launching to get people to try it out, because once they try it they're going to love it, but no one's been trying it. And so you can kind of push that into the flow. The fourth piece is around customer experience. And CX is somewhat buzzwordy. It's kind of this idea of customer, or sometimes known as consumer experience, has really kind of come to the forefront of the buzzword train. So I just wanted to jump right on. But customer experience, really pertains to a life cycle of interactions. And frankly, scholarly and scientific publishers have been doing life cycle customer experience for quite a while, all the way from students to trainees to junior members to members, working people through their education, through their career, through their reward systems. So this should come naturally to scholarly and scientific publishers to think that this is not a one-time transactional relationship with someone, but I want to continually reinforce the value I'm bringing them. And of course, this also matches well with the membership model for those of you that have members. And again, if you have a unified platform, the ability to deliver consistency on this is great. And I think Jasper is going to show some examples of the kind of consistency and consistent positive experience you can deliver to these to your customers. And last but not least will be user intelligence. Again, this can be pieced together as well. It just becomes a little easier to if you have a lot of it assembled already, and you don't have to assemble 5, 6, 7, 8 different analytics streams at the same time, and you can do it from one or a few. It's a little simpler, a little less complexity. And right now we see a lot of our customers using these analytics for post-action analysis. What are people reading? Where are they coming? Where are they coming from geographically? What subject areas are growing? But of course, as many of you have experienced on consumer applications, streaming that back into real-time experiences is really what we're all aiming for here, so that you can have a much faster feedback loop between when the user does an action that would signify a need and when you can put new content in front of that user. You don't want that to be 3 months later. It'd be great if that was 3 seconds later. So I have 5 benefits and 3 challenges, so I'm kind of tilted the playing field here a little bit. That's my license. And I put the challenges together, and some of these were discussed on the in-source, outsource discussion earlier. So 5 different products and 5 different product platforms are going to have a lot of features. And if you have a search that has 5 or 6 unique filters on 6 products, then you're going to have 30 to 36 unique search filters, which becomes overbearing a bit on the user experience in a unified product to have 36 options every time a user wants to click something. So you will, one of the challenges or items to manage is really about how do you choose where the value is, and how do you think about, can I actually degrade this feature in a way that does not degrade the overall user experience. There is a question of risk concentration. So some people like to have 5 platforms because they have 5 necks to choke, I guess. But having 1 neck to choke is a little easier for a 2-handed person. Is that on video? Sorry, that's not good. So there is the item of risk, and then the third part is, and this is really a challenge in the operational side, which is there's a lot more going on under the covers in technology than you see from the front end. And I think Max also talked about this, that this front ends of products can be deceptively simple. but there's a lot going on in the back end. And so you might look at the front end of 5 products and go, I immediately can see how this could be a simplified, unified product. But it's important to know what's going on in the back end of those systems, because there might be some key things that are actually making the product succeed in the market, and you don't want to wash those out. So, as a quick summary here, I found a quote from a very wise philosopher, and I want to read it to you just so I get it exactly right. Here we go. You take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have the facts of life. The facts of life. So there are benefits, there are challenges. I don't know who that was attributed to. It must have been Confucius, I believe. But these are, just to summarize on the theoretical side, these are the things you will encounter if you think about bringing your platforms and your product delivery platforms together. And I'd like to turn it over to Scott Henry from ASM International to talk about his journey with these in a very specific case study with your content. So thank you.
So we are right in the midst of our unified platform implementation, and I'm really great that there's a lot of Silverchair staff here, because that means they're not anxiously waiting for us to provide the feedback and inputs on our staging environment that we should be providing. So that's great. That'll all save up, and Friday will be a very busy day. So I'm with an organization called ASM International. We're a not-for-profit engineering society. And we have a pretty diverse set of products and services for a relatively small organization. We're in the roughly 75 staff, $15 to $20 million annual revenue. But we've been around for a long time. We were founded in 1913. We are a sort of more on the professional society when you talk about scholarly and professional publishing, but we serve a pretty broad range of users and content types. But we were started sort of with an industrial focus, and that still is a large portion of what we serve. Even the academics that are in our membership and our authors and content consumers often have a little bit more applied focus of their an engineering focus, maybe, as opposed to a fundamental research focus. And like a lot of professional societies, we do a lot of different things. So we have meetings and shows, but publishing and content dissemination has always been a pretty significant focus. About, I'd say, more than a third of our staff are really focused on that side of our business. And a lot of that activity grew up in the second half of the 20th century, when there was a significant expansion in the industries that we served. The number of people who were becoming material scientists and engineers really grew enormously, and that sort of grew with the development of trade shows and events and other types of professional society activities. And so that was great. We were going gangbusters, a lot of innovation on our end in terms of products and services. One of our big products is called the ASM Handbook. It's the volumes down the lower side. And I should also mention, one symbol of the sort of growth and dynamic type of organization is that one of our founding the founding director of our society had a lot of farmland in the Northeast Ohio area. He donated to the society, and we built this large geodesic dome based on concepts that Buckminster Fuller had developed, and he was somewhat involved during the design phase of the dome. And the idea is showing sort of, what humankind has been able to do with their mastery over materials. So all that was great. I joined the society late in the 80s, still sort of in that growth phase, but things really started to change pretty significantly, and a lot of that growth stalled, especially in the early, in the 90s and the early parts of the 2000s. And a lot of it had to do with changes in, across the board, in professional societies, in membership organizations. Publishing technologies obviously changed a lot during that time period. So we've gone through a sort of this dynamic organization with lots of content innovation, a lot of legacy businesses that have been pretty successful, but we've been through a sort of I'd say a decade or more of really not quite sure where we're going, not quite sure how to take advantage and maximize the value of those disparate activities. In 2016, we had a brand new management team hired, and they sort of took a fresh look at this and said, you're trying to, what you're building on is not really going to help you maximize what you need to do. And they rethought the whole technology infrastructure, the whole framework, and basically the fundamental businesses that the organization was in. So I've already talked about this a little bit, but like professional societies, we have events and membership activities. We have education courses. But in the publishing side, we've got journals, and journals are the biggest part of our publishing business. But unlike some other societies, we have a lot of other publishing activities, what we call reference publications, handbooks, technical books, data sheets, databases of various types. And then we also are on the news magazine side of things. So we've got ad-driven magazines, online news. So it's a pretty diverse set of activities. So obviously, in order to be relevant, all of that content had to go from a print publishing paradigm. And I won't belabor this because I'm sure a lot of organizations have been through similar trajectories. But in the 1980s, we went from databases on diskettes to, in the 90s, there was sort of an adoption of digital technologies. We got really excited about media independent, format independent tagging, so we adopted SGML for our flagship content sets. And that's sort of where we have been up until just this year. Then in the 2000s, there was a lot of growth of websites, and I'll show a little bit of sort of, it ties in a lot with what Jake was talking about in terms of custom-built, distinct interfaces for each of our content types. Then in the 2010s, there was some homegrown efforts. Conceptually, I think we understood that basic model that Jake was talking about of, well, you need to unify these things. How do you do that? And there were various approaches. I think we sort of tried in some form or another many of the things that he talked about of, well, unify it at this level, unify it at that level. None of those things really had the power that we were looking for, the capability. And then now, since 2016, we've really been focused on reinventing the organization, taking a fresh look. That forced us to do some really ground up look at how we're organized, what we're doing, what technologies are we using, and really focused on trying to serve our users, our members better. And I would say discoverability is a key issue for us. All of those custom-built platforms that we built worked okay once you got there, but knowing that you needed to get there was kind of has been a big challenge for us. I won't go into the detail of all of these different things, but there is a reason that these sort of are formatted in a kind of siloed way, in that they represent some of the different types of interfaces that we've had. And so essentially, oftentimes we would have a pre-existing product, maybe from a print background, and we would say, okay, this needs to get on the web, or this needs to be a digital thing. How do we get there? And oftentimes what that meant was building a very customized product around that. In some cases, we did adopt a somewhat unified platform for things that were maybe somewhat alike, like if they were numeric databases, granular relational databases, we use a granular relational database technology. But in a lot of cases, we were adapting things that weren't really built for a publishing rationale into a new context. And in some cases that worked okay, in some cases it hasn't really worked the way it needs to. And so in general, we have a situation where all of our platforms are past due for upgrades and modernization. Discoverability is a real challenge, as I said. And then all those things about reporting, compliance. If our customers need counter reports in these existing platforms, it's kind of up to us to say, okay, let's get some of our folks in our information technology area to work on making sure that these reports meet the counter requirements. And that's not really value added, as Jake noted. So the vision is that we take all those disparate types of content and we manage them a little bit more as granular information objects, mostly tagged as XML content. And we figure out ways to put them together into a common platform that provides all of those important aspects, the search, the discovery. We still have a print publishing business, so we want to make sure that the content formats that we're using are consistent with continuing to deliver print, but doing it a little bit more flexibly, a little more agile methodology. We're also interested in the content development side of things. Our content comes from a lot of different sources, but we have many authors who don't necessarily have the same imperative that a journal author has to publish. A lot of times we're going to them saying, don't you really want to write the best information about this technology? And in some cases they do, but they don't have to do it in order to keep their jobs. And then I think the baseline is all of this needs robust analytics, usage reporting. We're very interested not only in being able to deliver those counter reports without having to exhaust our own resources, but also interested in the kind of insights that you can get from where is this content being used, how is it being used, which content items are being used most often. And we're very interested in that rapid content development, ability to create new packages, new ways of combining content together. So as I mentioned, we're sort of neck deep in this as we speak, and we're taking a pretty rapid pathway here. In 2017, we sort of started on, we knew that we wanted, the strategy that Jake outlined was very much kind of what we thought, this needs to be less about these disparate platforms, more unified. So we did some benchmarking with some of our sister societies. We developed a content roadmap. We worked with Delta Think on that, and they helped us, did a great job. Basically just looking at, well, what do you want to do, helping us organize our thoughts about what's unique about us, but also how can we work in a framework that's going to increase the power of our capabilities. Also working with Delta Think, we developed an RFP. We knew that the platform was a critical consideration. Our content transformation is not limited to platform. We need to look at sort of all aspects from authoring, content management, content reuse, but the platform element seemed most critical to us. So we developed an RFP for that and selected Silverchair in the early part of 2018. And as we were doing that, we also had to upgrade a lot of our content because we had content in tagged media independent format, but it wasn't the modern version of bits XML or JATS that really these unified platforms are built around. So we're both in the process of implementing our platform, but also converting all of our content and making sure that it's converted well and accurately. So in the second half, at the end of this year, we are planning to launch the first product in this platform, and that's our ASM Handbook, which is a flagship for us. It's a reference content product. It's been around for 90 plus years and is seen as somewhat of the Bible of material science and materials engineering. But as I mentioned, it's kind of poorly discoverable in its current form. We think there's a lot of baseline capabilities that just putting it into a modern publishing platform, let alone a unified publishing platform, is going to help us a lot. But at the same time, there was the question of, well, you could just do this for the handbooks, and then then you still have all of these other disparate things in different technologies that don't work well together, aren't linked together. How do you deal with them? And so our thought is like many publishers, many publishers look at what they do and they say, this is sort of the core of our business. How do we then kind of expand outward from there? Many of our peer societies are focused on standards and standards development and dissemination. So for them, sort of organizing around standards makes a lot of sense. For ASM, because we're a little bit more diverse, the handbook is a key fundamental focus for us. And I think that's a good place for us to start. But we do need to then move into these other types of content sets, some of which are very well aligned with handbooks and are structured in similar ways. In some cases, they're significantly different, and so that's going to be the next part of our journey, is dealing with that issue of sort of customization versus the power of standardization. So as we get into those next content sets, in some cases we will probably be guided by the choices we're making as we implement it for this one set of content. but at the same time, we're trying to keep our eyes on the prize in terms of, okay, what happens when you start integrating journals or some of these more granular databases or graphic objects into the system. And it's kind of based on the vision. So we went through many iterations of this vision statement, working with our partners at Delta Think. But the idea being that we're trying to think of our content more as a digital library. There are many societies who have built kind of digital libraries and have figured out ways to make their content a little bit more searchable. And so we're on that same journey, and we think using this unified platform is the best way to get there, the best way to deliver the kinds of value that our members and users need. And it's all really about serving the subjects and the users that are in our area. They don't care so much about some of the, whether your content's in XML or whether it's a PDF, but they care a lot about the usability, the functionality, the findability of this content. Some of the criteria, and I guess what I would say is if you're looking at the benefits and challenges, these were the benefits that we were looking for. That is, in developing our RFP, we focused on these particular areas. The fact that we have multiple content types and we need to be able to link those together. We think the semantic side of things for our domain is really the best way to try to connect up some of these disparate content sets. The other part of it's more the technology backbone of how do people get to this content? How do we authenticate users? We have invested in some new systems for our CRM, association management technologies within the past year. We've really tried to go about that the right way to make sure that those systems work and can also be applied to this kind of content publishing area. So we need to integrate, the ability to integrate there. And then, as I mentioned before, the highlight for us is discoverability and user experience. Going from platforms that are rather poorly discoverable into ones that have all of the baseline capabilities that users expect. And what we're trying to do, I suppose, is to catch up with some things that in, say, the journal world have been more or less the accepted standard for the past 10 years. The fact that you can find things on Google Scholar, and that most users come in through a search engine like Google. They're not coming to your platform and just doing the search there. We aren't optimized for that now, but we expect that really is how people find information in this day and age, and we need to be consistent with that. And then things like reporting usage, user data, data analytics, just being able to do the basic blocking and tackling, but also because we have we serve a pretty diverse content area, lots of different materials, lots of different processing technologies. In some cases, the default for us has been, well, let's cover the waterfront. We have to have content on all of this sort of stuff. But we suspect that the real value is in certain areas where people are very hungry for specific types of information. And to a large extent, that's a little bit blind to us now. We really don't have good analytics on what our users need and want and use most frequently. And therefore, when we develop new content, go out and seek out content, we're a little bit blind in that regard. Just from the conversations this morning, earlier this afternoon, and also from Jake's introduction, I could have added lots of different circles on here. There are lots of challenges in here. Some things I didn't really even think about in terms of like the cultural aspects of things, but they are significant and important. But for us, these are some of the highlights of some of the challenges. Just figuring out what to do in what order. We have lots of different challenges that we need to solve, and we are committed to being aggressive to do better in our content and publishing activities to make them richer, more powerful resources. But you have to start somewhere. We decided to start with the platform, and we decided to start with one of our richest content sets as a starting point. And we think we'll learn along the way, and that will help us with the future phases. Then just the content conversion of taking content and deciding what is the right content model for that. XML seems to be a standard, but there are lots of different flavors of XML, and it's used for different aspects. Journals, you have JATs, and books, you have bits. We also have magazines, we have graphic objects. So we are following the BITS XML protocol for our reference handbook content and our book content. We then will have to see whether we want to sort of commit to that for some other content sets or look to integrate some other structures along the way. A big one for us is this standard model versus customization. If you're just building a platform from the ground up, you say, well, okay, what's this content? What's it need to do? How do people want to work with it? Oh, they like to search for this specific aspect. Okay, let's build a little search widget for this. Well, it's the same issue that Jake was mentioning earlier. If you integrate then with 20 different content sets, and you've got all of these little fine-grained elements that you've built, it may not apply to the whole set, right? So you have to figure out, if you're really trying to generate this benefit of a unified platform, how do you not sort of over-customize for some very particular sorts of things? But on the other hand, how do you serve the needs of users who maybe are used to having those particular capabilities even on like a locally installed DVD product or something like that? We have some products with pretty rich, deep search, custom search capabilities. So that's an issue for us. I think in general what we're trying to do is say, well, let's start from a baseline of let's make the standardized approaches to discovery work, and then we will figure out those situations that really do require customization. But customization obviously comes with a burden. You've got to develop it, you've got to sustain it, you've got to maintain it. So we're trying to be very selective about that. And then the other issue is just sort of the big picture customer and business issues. Up till now, in a lot of cases, our platforms are sort of binary. Either you get in or you don't get in. So it's kind of easy from a business perspective, is like the model is either you're buying the whole thing or you're getting nothing at all. From going to a unified platform, we expect to be able to develop much more custom products that meet specific needs of users in different industries. On the other hand, you can overdo that, right? You can project that there's a demand out there for X, Y, or Z, and build towards that, and then discover that that's not really where the business is. So I think, obviously, what we hope for is to have a lot of flexibility to try things out, see if they work, and then focus on those things that really have a strong demand behind them. And that's it.
Thank you, Scott. I'll get you set up here.
Thanks, Jake. Thanks, Scott. That was very interesting. Best of luck on your journey with that. Hello, everyone. Thanks, Shane, for inviting me, and for Jake for inviting me to this particular panel. I look forward to give you an update on what the APA has done regarding their platform strategy. We're about a $100 million publishing organization, fairly diverse, journals, books. We have a PsycInfo, an aggregator discovery platform. We also have other materials that I'll talk about a little bit more. So we're not as big as IEEE yet. We're going for it. So we've always had, at least I've been with the APA for 4 years. We have had a unified platform for a very long time. Since 1998, that's the year where the World Press for the first time starts accepting digital copies of photos. It's also the year that Matt Damon and Ben Affleck won Best Oscars for Good Will Hunting. But way before my time, so I can't share kind of a personal experience about what it was to integrate all these different products. I'll refer to that when it comes up sort of throughout the presentation. But I want to also highlight the fact that we have a sort of multi-pronged distribution approach. We have our own platform, and we have distributed partners like EBSCO, ProQuest, and Ovid, who help us sort of as a sales and marketing organization, but they host the content for us as well. So I'll talk about that as well a little bit. I'm not sure if there are many of you who have a similar situation, but that could be insightful for you. So this is what our content sort of buckets look like. We have Psych Articles, which is our journal content. We have about 90 APA journals. We also host content, journal content, the exclusive provider for the Canadian Psychological Association, and we're the US distributor for the Hograph printing, publishing company from Germany. So it's We both have our own. We have partners, content on the journal side. Then we have on the bottom is our books content. We have about a couple hundred books in there, maybe 50 a year. Some of those are major reference works. Like you mentioned too, some of the content that you have, Scott, or multi-volume encyclopedias in the psychology space. PsychTest is a really fascinating product. This is a database of about 100 years worth of tests and measurements. So if you go to, if your child goes to a psychologist and needs to learn to deal with an anxiety phobia, my son is scared as hell of spiders, if he would go to a psychologist, they might sort of use particular tests or instruments to measure, so what's the level of anxiety that he has. So we document them. This is not sort of the platform where you get the test, but we index them so that people can search through and do research on these tests because they evolve over time. It's really fascinating. And PsycInfo is our largest product and covers about 2,500 journals in the behavioral sciences. So APA content, but also Taylor and Francis content, Elsevier content, Sage, lots of other journal providers all cover their books as well. So it's a mix of different content types. Those are all offered on the PsycNet platform, as they are on our third-party platform providers, the EBSCO, ProQuest, and Ovid, with one exception, that's psychotherapy, and that is a database of psychotherapy sessions. So these are actually real subjects. So these are people in real sessions who are videotaped, and we transcribe the entire interaction so that people who are starting to become a psychologist can really go through how does the patient respond to a particular question and see exactly what kind of questions are asked. That, Ava Weiner told me, who was our platform manager who was here, was by far the hardest area or the content set to integrate into the PsycNet platform. So we have created kind of a user experience that makes it appear like it's exactly the same, but there's more sort of happening on the background. We don't have the same kind of streaming capabilities on the platform, but the rest is all fully integrated. Make sense? Good. So this is what it looks like. If you go to the PsycNet platform, to our subscribers, they do a search on confirmation bias. They would get a number of results, and in this particular case, you can see across the horizontal top kind of the database or the clusters of content, the content types that are all included in the search results. So I think, what do we have? Psych books, so there are 11 results, psych articles, 79, PsycInfo, 572. And on the left side on the navigation bar, we have the way you can sort of parse through and browse through the content. Now, this really is, in my view, one of the areas where the value of a unified platform is most sort of powerful. Because we have our own thesaurus and vocabulary, the searching across all the content is extremely rich and precise. We also have our own taxonomy, so the browsing experience is also very enabling for finding more about a particular topic. It also means that we have a sizable staff in the back office on the indexing side to make sure that we just apply all those sort of value-added features that end up in the platform across all the different data sets and the components that we have. We also have, since we host our own platform, a sizable technology staff. So yes, Jake, the CFOs are always interested in the financial side, but this really is about the value that we can provide to our customers. So I want to dig into that a little bit more and share with you sort of what is the feedback that we're getting from our librarians about why they choose to opt for the PsycNet platform, and also one for someone who has chosen to work with the EBSCO provider. All right, so the two, PsycNet, and which provides a targeted subject-specific platform, and then a partner platforms. The one thing that I want to point out there is that since EBSCO, ProQuest, and Ovid provide not only our content, but also those from other publishers, it goes broader. So they clearly have not just our content, and this is what we have on ours, fully integrated with the thesaurus and a taxonomy, so people can search through that. But it stops at the boundaries of where we have our content. Of course, with our third-party providers, that is not the case. All right, so this is one subject liaison in psychology that was very much, it's been a long-time customer and interested in PsycNet because of the sort of the subject-specific functionality that we have. So it's about the searching, about the browsing experience. I met on the example that I gave, the confirmation bias, the results. You can see on the left navigation things like age group or methodology used in the field. So all the sort of the content-specific areas, Scott, that you talked about. You need to decide how deep you go to make the user experience still sort of similar across the data sets, but still valuable and rich enough that it really gets to the heart of what our end users want. And the classification codes allow for the targeted finding of our content. So really tailoring the platform across all that content specifically for psychology is what resonated with her. Another library from Canada, I think. Yes, from Canada. She actually had a very different kind of approach to it. And this is something that I think we haven't really talked about, but the value of the association, sort of managing not only the content but also the technology. She's saying that if you know the content, then although you might think that sort of the specialty sort of capabilities of technology teams might provide particular benefits, she actually had a very different interpretation. She's saying that just because you own the content, you'll also make the best choices for the platform. And I think that's one area that I think we haven't really heard in the past. So there might be sort of implications of sort of the technology side where we can compete. But in her case, it resonates and it builds sort of on the brand that we have in the field. So just as a 1 point for, as a comparison for a partner platform. So she's from a large state school in the United States and subscribed to, I think this is EBSCO. They particularly like the fact that they could limit the number of interfaces that they need to support for their students. So if they can have one interface for multiple content sets, so it also plays into the unified entry point for end users, not having multiple entry points. This librarian says, I want that even larger. I don't want to buy a separate database from APA if I can also get it on the EBSCO platform. So it's just a different sort of value weighting. All right, so challenges, not only of having a unified platform, but just having the platform to begin with as an association. We're always catching up. The technical debt or just getting on par with the competition is something that just takes a lot of resources. Having your own dedicated resources, it's not always as easy to attract talent from the technology side. If you're an 125-year-old association associated with kind of expertise and standard setting in the field. I think retaining that talent is equally hard, not only just getting it initially, because it's a competitive environment, particularly in DC these days. Ongoing investment in hardware, and the core competency still remains with of course, our content, and that's something that we don't forget, and that is a challenge when you think about where to spend the dollars that you have. On the plus side, there's a couple of characters from our children's books line. It's called Imagination Press. It really is I'm blown away by it. It's a small program that we've had for a number of years. So they deal with psychological and behavioral issues for children and young adults, and it's a really wonderful program. But some of the benefits really are the control over the user experience. So we can decide. We were ahead of our other platform providers on the GDPR implementation, because we can control the roadmap, because we're not competing with anyone else. We can build new functionality where we want, when we want, at the time that we want. So the releases, we don't have to schedule and get in line with anybody else. We can control that much more. The fact that we can provide a broader set of content and add new content if we want is another benefit for us. And I think that I'm trying to think if, Scott, if you mentioned about the workflow integration, there are a couple of benefits, of course, as well. We used to have our own, where's Mark? We used to have our own peer review platform as well at APA. We don't do that anymore. But having the ability to integrate on the back office systems is something that is just, I think it's an important piece, and we don't talk about it that often. Let's see, so conclusion, I'd say it's targeting, having a unified content platform, and in our case that we host and control, to really sort of build the user experience around the content, and in our case sort of allow to our thesaurus and our taxonomy to really sort of integrate those pieces, not just from the technology, but from the user experience, is by far the most important aspect. And then having control over how you do that and when you do it is a second one. So we've been very happy, if there is any doubt about that. So that's it. Thank you.
We have time for a few questions. You know, it would be great if someone wants to raise their hand and take a mic. I promise you, you will jump to the front of the line if you do so. Anurag, here comes the mic.
Hello? Yeah. Questions for Jasper. You described two different approaches of getting content to users. One is on the APA platform, with all the additional functionality that's available on the platform. And on the partner platforms where uniformity across a lot of different interfaces was useful. Have you considered, or maybe this already exists, a mechanism of being able to transfer users from the partner platforms to the SiteNet platform, so that people who want to dig in deeper, people who want to take advantage of the functionality that's available on SiteNet are able to do so?
It's an interesting question. If they pay twice, that would be great too. But as a way to attract people to the platform, I don't think we've really looked at it in those terms. I would expect that our partner platforms would consider that kind of usage leakage, or they probably won't be as excited about that as we might be, but we'll take it up with them.
Great. I see a question in the back here. Is there a microphone over there? Greg, you've really parked way back there. Oh, here it comes.
Hi, Greg Fagan, DCL. So, Jasper, now that being that you own the technology and the content, what's your ratio of IT development staff to editorial staff? And Jake, on the theoretical level, what's the ideal there?
Ooh, you first.
So we have 186 people in the publishing sort of group that I'm responsible for, which includes all these different content domains. But also we have our own sales and marketing organization, because we support our own platform in that regard. I think our ITS organization in total, I think, is about 140, but that also includes our support for things like our convention and our other programs. So the exact split, maybe it's half. I don't know. It's costly, no doubt about that. I mean, we carry these are not interns, and I think it's expensive. So it's a trade-off, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and I'm going to totally punt on that question, because Silverchair doesn't have an editorial operation. I'll second what Jasper was saying, which is this technology maintenance and management cost, it's a people cost. Mm-hmm. This is a staff cost. We're not, even with someone like Silverchair, you see as technology first, technology platform, the majority of our costs are not cloud hosting and software and database licensing. It's people. So we try to have the right mix of folks maintaining the software, again, back to the concept of the commodity versus competitive. You do try to be efficient with the commodity areas that you don't feel like you're competitively differentiating, and you try to put your people on the competitive side. But as you grow and as your surface area of your platform expands, you do need a lot of people, and I'm sure Jasper would agree, even just on the keeping the lights on crew, the maintenance and management crew. I have a question for you, Scott,
Okay.
and that is your journals are hosted on SpringerLink, correct, with
Right.
Springer Nature, and how does that factor into your future unification plans?
Well, that was something that so part of, we were impressed with how the major commercial publishers have dealt with kind of large platforms and discoverability of content. What's a little bit frustrating for us, though, is that the question is how tightly connected are our journals with our society, especially if you're working with a major commercial publisher. For us, we want to be sort of the domain experts. So ideally for us, Springer can do what they do and we can maximize the benefit of our relationship with Springer, but we would like that content also to be discoverable via ASM. If people are searching for answers to problems, they shouldn't have to sort of go over here to Springer Link and then go somewhere else. So that's what our discussions with Springer. We haven't figured out exactly how we're going to accomplish that. Either we'll do it on sort of an ANI level where you can discover the content on our unified digital library platform, or we'll do something a little bit richer where we have all of the content indexed on that platform, but still sort of drive all of the library subscriber users to Springer Link, because that's an important consideration for us as well.
Great. Well, just being conscious here of time, I'm going to have to cut the questions at this point, but I'd like to thank again Scott and Jasper for joining us and sharing their case study.